Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are breaking down a source that lays out a prosecutorial-style case against the former FBI Director James Comey, piece by piece. At the very heart of this argument is a conflict that, according to the source, just can't be reconciled. It's a conflict that pits the former FBI Director against his own number two, and maybe even more importantly, against his own statements made under oath. So let's start right there with that core accusation. It all boils down to two completely opposite statements about leaking to the media, both of which were given under oath.
On May 3rd, 2017, in this committee, Chairman Grassley asked you point blank, quote, "Have you ever been an anonymous source in news reports about matters relating to the Trump investigation or the Clinton investigation?" You responded under oath, quote, "Never." He then asked you, quote, "Have you ever authorized someone else at the FBI to be an anonymous source in news reports about the Trump investigation or the Clinton administration?" You responded again under oath, "No."
Okay, so on one side, you have James Comey's sworn testimony in front of the Senate. And on the other, you've got this totally conflicting story from his own deputy director, Andrew McCabe. McCabe's claim is that Comey knew about a leak to the press and basically gave it his blessing. The source's argument is really simple. Both of these stories can't be true. Somebody is not telling the truth.
Has publicly and repeatedly stated that he leaked information to the Wall Street Journal and that you were directly aware of it and that you directly authorized it. Now, what Mr. McCabe is saying and what you testified to this committee cannot both be true. One or the other is false. Who's telling the truth?
I can only speak to my testimony. I stand by what the testimony you summarized that I gave in May of 2017.
So your testimony is you've never authorized anyone to leak. And Mr. McCabe, if he says contrary, is not telling the truth. Is that correct?
Again, I'm not going to characterize Andy's testimony, but mine is the same today.
You know, what's really striking here is just how forceful Comey's denial was. When Senator Chuck Grassley asked him straight up, had he ever been an anonymous source or told someone else to be one, his answers were just so final. Never and no. There's just no wiggle room there, you know? It's not an "I don't recall" or a "maybe." It's a hard, definitive denial.
Director Comey, have you ever been an anonymous source in news reports about matters relating to the Trump investigation or the Clinton investigation?
Never.
Question two on relatively related. Have you ever authorized someone else at the FBI to be an anonymous source in news reports about the Trump investigation or the Clinton investigation?
No.
And this whole contradiction, it didn't just go away. Fast forward a few years to 2020, Comey gets questioned about it all over again, this time by Senator Ted Cruz. And what does he do? He doubles down. He says, quote, "I stand by the testimony I gave in May of 2017. That reaffirmation, right there, is the foundation for the entire case the source is building.
On May 3rd, 2017, in this committee, Chairman Grassley asked you point blank, quote, "Have you ever been an anonymous source in news reports about matters relating to the Trump investigation or the Clinton investigation?" You responded under oath, quote, "Never." He then asked you, quote, "Have you ever authorized someone else at the FBI to be an anonymous source in news reports about the Trump investigation or the Clinton administration?" You responded again under oath, "No." Now, as you know, Mr. McCabe, who works for you, has publicly and repeatedly stated that he leaked information to the Wall Street Journal and that you were directly aware of it and that you directly authorized it. Now, what Mr. McCabe is saying and what you testified to this committee cannot both be true. One or the other is false. Who's telling the truth?
I can only speak to my testimony. I stand by what the testimony you summarized that I gave in May of 2017.
So your testimony is you've never authorized anyone to leak. And Mr. McCabe, if he says contrary, is not telling the truth. Is that correct?
Again, I'm not going to characterize Andy's testimony, but mine is the same today.
All right, let's move on to the first major piece of evidence the source brings to the table, and that's a report from the Department of Justice's own internal watchdog, the Inspector General. Now you gotta understand, an IG report is supposed to be the objective, nonpartisan take on what actually happened. And the source we're looking at leans really heavily on the findings from one particular report from August 2019, which looked specifically at how James Comey handled some sensitive documents. And the findings from that report? They were pretty damning. The IG concluded that Comey didn't protect sensitive information and that he set a, quote, dangerous example. A key part of this was an incident right after he was fired, where he got a friend to leak the contents of a personal memo to the press. And the IG's conclusion on that was clear. He was using non-public info to create public pressure and get an outcome he wanted. This quote really just nails it down, doesn't it? It gets to the absolute heart of the IG's findings, that this wasn't just some mistake, it was a calculated misuse of sensitive information to get something he personally wanted. And in the IG's view, that set a dangerous example for every single person working at the FBI. So, from here, the source really starts to zoom out. The argument becomes that the stuff detailed in the IG report wasn't just a one-off thing, but was actually part of a much larger pattern of misconduct. The first place the source goes is the whole Michael Flynn investigation. And the claim here is pretty explosive, that this wasn't a real investigation to find the truth, but was, in the source's words, an entrapment operation, right from the get-go. So here's how the source lays it all out. Step 1, the FBI allegedly leaks info on Flynn's calls to the press. Step 2, they use that very news story as the official reason to go interview him. Step 3, an internal FBI note surfaces that actually questions what the real goal of the interview is. And Step 4, Comey himself bypasses the normal White House procedures to make the interview happen, something he even bragged about later.
You look at this White House now, and it's hard to imagine 2 FBI agents ending up in the sit room. How did that happen?
I sent them. Something I probably wouldn't have done or maybe gotten away with in a more organized investigation, a more organized administration. If the FBI wanted to send agents into the White House itself to interview a senior official, you would work through the White House counsel, and there'd be discussions and approvals and who would be there. And I thought, it's early enough, let's just send a couple guys over.
For the source, this note right here is the smoking gun. Think about it. This question, written by a top FBI official, is presented as direct proof that even inside the FBI, there was a real question about the motive. It's like, hey guys, what are we even doing here? Are we trying to get the facts, or are we trying to trap this guy? So using the Flynn case as a jumping off point, the source makes its biggest claim yet. It connects these actions to the very origins of the Russia investigation itself, citing claims that top officials knowingly pushed a, quote, false narrative to undermine the president. Okay, and this brings us to what is really the closing argument from the source, and it's all built around this, well, this really powerful irony from James Comey's own career. See, way before he was the director of the FBI, James Comey was a big-shot U.S. attorney, and he was the guy who led the prosecution of Martha Stewart. And one of the key charges in that very famous case? Lying to investigators. The source draws this direct line between the case Comey prosecuted back then and the accusations he's facing now. The source digs up Comey's own words from a press conference back in 2003, and in them, he draws this incredibly hard line, saying that lying to federal authorities is conduct that will not be tolerated. Full stop. And then the source puts these two things right next to each other. On one side, you have Comey, the prosecutor, saying there's zero tolerance for lying to investigators, and on the other, you have the allegation that he violated that exact principle by making a false statement himself, under oath. The whole point is to frame this as the ultimate hypocrisy. So what's the bottom line here? According to the source, these aren't just a bunch of random isolated controversies. The argument is that if you piece together the sworn testimony, the IG reports, and his past actions, you see what they claim is a clear, connected pattern of misconduct and deceit. And this right here, this is the actual law at the very center of it all. The source points directly to Title 18, Section 1001 of the U.S. Code. This is the federal statute that makes it a felony to lie to the government. It was central to the Martha Stewart prosecution, and it's the very same statute that underpins the allegations against Comey today. So by laying out this whole case, the source material really just leaves us with a big question to think about. How does the past conduct and the past words of our public figures shape how we think about accountability today? Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.